He was there all the time, and they were always stressing character. And Andy used to kill jokes if they were too broad. He just kept saying, the South is plenty funny on its own.
For decades, fans have cherished the Andy Griffith Show as the ultimate comfort television. A place where life was simple, laughter was pure, and Mayberry felt like home.
I don't know that there have been other single-camera shows that kind of held that tone. I don't think a kid would say it that way. It was just like I was a part of it.
But what if we told you that behind those wholesome scenes, strange secrets, on-set mysteries, and hidden truths were quietly at play? Even Ron Howard himself, the boy who played Opie, has opened up about what most fans never noticed. Did Mayberry have its share of ghostly goofs? Were the beloved characters hiding bigger backstage stories? Could it be that Mayberry wasn't as picture-perfect as we all believed? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the show that seemed flawless. Until now. The hidden goofs you never saw. For most viewers, the Andy Griffith Show represents a slice of television perfection. It's the kind of show that generations have turned to for its charm, simplicity, and gentle humor. But beneath that flawless surface, the show was filled with tiny mistakes and production quirks that most fans never noticed. Thanks to Ron Howard's own reflections and the keen eyes of dedicated fans revisiting the show in high definition, these hidden goofs have come into the light, revealing a Mayberry that was held together as much by quick thinking as by wholesome storytelling. Take, for example, the strange case of Ron Howard's real-life father, Rance Howard, who played minor roles on the show. In one memorable episode, Rance's character simply vanishes in the middle of a scene. There he is, waiting in the courthouse, part of the action, and then, without explanation, he's gone. Viewers were left puzzled, but the truth behind the scenes was far more human than mysterious. According to Ron, his father was urgently called away mid-filming for a personal emergency. With no time for a reshoot or explanation, the scene continued without him, leaving behind a jarring moment that still sparks discussion among sharp-eyed fans. But this was just the beginning. The Andy Griffith Show was a cornucopia of little snafus easily spotted only by the most astute observer, such as the one with the window, which was supposed to shatter but instead flapped like paper in a breeze because of how flimsy some of those sets really were. Or the one where Barney's motorcycle sidecar appears to pull free with great drama. But such a wooden block was used as a support underneath the whole contrivance for the gag that the vast majority of viewers at the time did not see it. Then, there were human blunders, which at times came to be endearing. There was more than one scene where hands, unrelated to any character on screen, can be seen closing doors, adjusting props, or even aiding in stunts. Goober notoriously seemed to talk without moving his lips, a dubbed line he added later, with no attempt to match the original performance. And in the Aunt Bee Learns to Drive episode, the production team tried to hide the stunt double using a hat on the driver so that the viewers wouldn't detect the switch. Obviously, in the replay today, that fails miserably. There was always a smudge like this that could attract the eyes of the audience from Mayberry because of the relationships between the characters and the humor and patriotism that made it worth watching. Had it not been so many years later, such mistakes would have given an impressive view of television at that time. Practical effects, edited in split seconds, and magic storytelling to smooth any rough bumps. The show wasn't entirely perfect, but that's really part of the reason that gave it its feel of truthfulness. And the longer fans look back, the more it becomes true that these missed moments tell their own story. And, as we'll see, those seams were often held together by personal connections that reached far beyond the screen. To many fans, Ron Howard will forever be remembered as Opie Taylor, the wide-eyed, freckle-faced boy who captured America's heart on The Andy Griffith Show. His role became an iconic part of television history, and his bond with Andy Griffith left a lasting impression. Reflecting on those years, Howard told People magazine in 1986, "Andy was like a wonderful uncle to me. He created an atmosphere of hard work and fun that I try to bring to my movies." That early experience not only shaped Howard as an actor, but laid the foundation for his future as an award-winning director, carrying Griffith's influence with him into every project. Behind that innocent character was a young actor whose experience on set was deeply shaped by the family who surrounded him, especially his father, Rance Howard. What many fans never realized is just how intertwined the Howard family was with the making of the show, both in front of and behind the camera. Ron wasn't just learning his lines, he was absorbing lessons about acting, storytelling, and professionalism directly from his dad in real time as the cameras rolled. Rance Howard wasn't a regular character on the show, but he appeared in multiple episodes in small but significant roles. More than that, Rance served as a guide and mentor for his son during those formative years. To young Ron, having his father nearby offered a sense of security and familiarity on a bustling television set that might have otherwise been overwhelming. But their bond went beyond comfort. Rance led by example. When he stepped into a scene, he did so with professionalism and focus, traits that Ron quietly soaked up. Exceptions in their ties became evident during the shooting of the series. In one of the episodes, Rance's on-screen character is supposed to appear in the courthouse with other townspeople. However, while shooting for the scene, he had to leave abruptly because of an emergency off-set. Apparently, that was not scripted, nor was it considered to be a clever bit of blocking. It just happened in the real world. In fact, while it resulted in a funny continuity omission that eagle-eyed fans do recall even today, it also highlighted the distinct challenges of managing family and work through a live set. Ron often credits those formative years in which he worked alongside his father for developing within him a profound respect for storytelling and collaboration. Unlike many of his child actor contemporaries, Ron was not thrust into the limelight by his stage parents, who were hungry to see their offspring get fame. Instead, he had a father who understood the industry, insisted on hard work, and wanted to teach through doing. Rance was certainly not there to scene steal or overshadow his son. His roles were small, his contributions quiet yet powerful in shaping how Ron viewed acting as a craft, its importance in preparation, and the art of blending humility with performance. The lessons Ron learned from watching his father went beyond individual scenes. Resilience, moments when Rance had to leave before the end of a shoot. Grace under pressure when everything went wrong. And the camaraderie of a set where everyone, from stars to supporting players, worked towards creating something meaningful. Such exposure to collaboration early on would serve as the defining characteristic of Ron's career, acting, and later directing. It is easy for the audience to get lost in the fictitious happenings of The Andy Griffith Show and forget what went on in real life to bring it all about. But once one begins to see the way family threads its way through the fabric of the production, it is evident that what really went on during the run wasn't just a show. Mayberry was, really, a kind of family affair. And that family influence didn't end with Rance Howard's occasional appearances. In fact, it opened the door to moments of pure spontaneity and error that would further humanize the show, making it the timeless classic we remember today. The Illusion of Mayberry's Town. On the surface, Mayberry seemed like the kind of town everyone wished they could live in. A peaceful place where doors were never locked, neighbors knew each other by name, and problems could be solved with a few kind words from Sheriff Andy Taylor. But beneath the charm and simplicity of the Andy Griffith Show was a carefully constructed illusion, held together by clever writing, tight production schedules, and the magic of television editing. What most fans never realized was just how many quirks, mistakes, and inconsistencies were hidden beneath that flawless small-town image. And Ron Howard's recent reflections shed new light on just how fragile the illusion truly was. One of the most fascinating aspects of Mayberry's on-screen perfection was how it was pieced together using tricks that didn't always stand up to close scrutiny. Sets designed to look like solid buildings were often just painted flats and plywood facades, giving the town its iconic look on camera, but revealing their flimsy nature with a misplaced step or an unexpected gust of wind. Streets that appeared well-worn and authentic were sometimes dirt tracks surrounded by paved sidewalks, a strange visual contradiction that most viewers overlooked because they were so engrossed in the story. Then, there were the props and set pieces that betrayed the show's low-budget, fast-paced production. Windows broke like paper when they should have been glass. Buildings appeared to change shape or size from one episode to the next. Even vehicles seemed to have a life of their own. In one memorable instance, a car mysteriously moved back and forth between shots, as if possessed. These weren't just minor slip-ups. They were reminders that the perfect town of Mayberry existed only in the imagination and in the carefully framed shots of the camera lens. Even these imperfections seemed never to bother it among audiences, adding to the show's charm. The technicality of the craft was little why the fans came in. It was to meet and touch characters they held dear, and the language of gentle humor that helped fill it. And well, a famous actor in his own right, Ron Howard learned to take things as they come, make do. If a prop didn't work, or a set piece acted up, carry on. The performance didn't depend on what was flawless. What built the illusion of Mayberry was heart and sincerity, and maybe that's the reason it has endured for decades. The illusion extended beyond the physical sets. Mayberry was portrayed as a social town that could not be affected by the social tremors of the 1960s, almost as if the outside world had never penetrated within. The cast and crew knew fairly well the evolving world just outside the studio gates. That feeling of Mayberry as a safe, idyllic bubble was yet a type of fiction, one that provided solace to a worried audience. And yet, even with rifts in the surface, Mayberry stands for a nostalgic ideal. The technical mistakes and production blunders fans spot today on reruns and streaming platforms don't take away from that legacy. If anything, they somehow add to the reality of the town, the humanity of the town. Because at the end of the day, that is just it. Mayberry was kind of flawed, the way all places should be, a reflection of the people who make it, the good and the bad, and their improvisations. Those imperfections didn't just shape how viewers saw Mayberry. They also created opportunities for unexpected moments of humor and humanity on set, moments that would define the show's spirit in ways no script could have planned. Ron's own childhood secrets. For millions of fans, Ron Howard will forever be remembered as the wide-eyed, innocent Opie Taylor, the beloved son of Sheriff Andy Taylor and the heart of the Andy Griffith Show. But behind that wholesome image was a childhood far more complex than most viewers ever imagined. While Ron appeared to embody the perfect all-American boy on screen, the reality of growing up on a television set came with challenges, sacrifices, and secrets that rarely made their way into the public eye. In recent years, Ron Howard has offered glimpses into what it was truly like to come of age in the glow of Mayberry's carefully constructed spotlight. And the revelations have been surprising. Unlike Opie, who spent his fictional days fishing with his father, attending school, or playing in the safety of a small town, Ron's real childhood was marked by long hours, high expectations, and the constant pressure to perform. From the time he was a toddler, Ron was immersed in the world of show business. Acting wasn't just a fun hobby or after-school activity. It was a job, one that required discipline beyond his years. While his peers were learning to ride bikes or playing in neighborhood parks, Ron was memorizing scripts, hitting his marks, and navigating the complexities of an adult work environment. The set of The Andy Griffith Show became his classroom, his playground, and his second home. But it was never entirely carefree. How lucky was I to grow up in that situation where the actors were set up to participate, make suggestions? Howard reflected, emphasizing that even as a child he felt at ease sharing his ideas. The stress that came with being a child star was something that most fans did not know. The burden was not just on him from producers or directors. Also, the audiences had to think that they were getting to know the person in real life. Wherever he went, he was just Opie, that sweet, good-natured boy whom fans adored on an open-ended basis. That image could be a blessing, though sometimes it could also be slightly unduly. Ron did indeed, off-screen, sometimes live under so much pressure to be that. One of Ron's best-kept secrets was his yearning for a normal life. He enjoyed the craft of acting and loved his co-stars, but there were times he wanted nothing more than to be a regular kid. He pined for free time for himself, to be able to make friends who were not from the industry, and to find out just who he was apart from the character he portrayed. But chances were few and far between. When Ron was not shooting for something, he was more often than not preparing for the upcoming episode or attending some kind of promotional event, or going through training for his next role. His life had been scripted in a variety of ways, allowing little for the spontaneous. Both of Ron Howard's parents had been actors, and so they had put much effort into keeping him away from the bad sides of fame. His father, Rance Howard, has been credited in some works, like The Andy Griffith Show. His mother, Jean, offers all the emotional support, besides hammering into him the values that would keep him grounded. No matter how parents do it, Ron has yet to be exempt from all that sometimes comes with being a public figure at that age, an emotional worth of love. The amazing part is that Ron turned the experiences around him in those early years into strengths later in life. And those hidden struggles weren't just Ron's alone. They mirrored the quiet sacrifices many of his co-stars made behind the scenes, sacrifices that would come to define their time on the show in ways fans never suspected. What made The Andy Griffith Show feel so authentic wasn't just its writing or performances. It was the subtle, behind-the-scenes techniques that brought Mayberry to life in ways few viewers ever suspected. Every episode relied on a blend of practical effects, clever staging, and old-school production magic that kept audiences charmed and convinced that Mayberry was a living, breathing town. These tricks weren't always flashy, but they were essential in weaving the seamless world fans came to adore. A perfect example of this television sleight of hand was how the crew created comedic moments that appeared effortless. Scenes featuring physical gags, like Barney's frequent run-ins with malfunctioning equipment, were carefully choreographed, with hidden wires, off-camera hands, or props designed to fall apart at just the right time. In one instance, when Barney's motorcycle sidecar dramatically broke loose, it wasn't an accident. It was staged with precision, right down to the disguised supports that made the collapse look spontaneous. Such moments felt real because they were engineered to seem accidental. Tricks for animals were another form of illusion that enchanted the spectators, but this time demanded a meticulous choreographic staging. A good example of this was the famous drunk chicken from Aunt Bee the Crusader. While the plot says the chicken had gotten into the moonshine, the truth was much less saucy. Instead, say, the crew had strung a thin, nearly invisible line to the chicken's head and pulled it gently and off-camera to give the illusion of the bird staggering from intoxication. It was, thus, both convincing and funny, providing evidence of how simple solutions could deliver laughs for ages without ever involving a real inebriated animal. It used a lot of clever editing to cover up the mess-ups or suggest something physical. So numerous examples exist in which one seems spontaneous on screen, but actually, this is put together from many takes or accentuated by cues off-camera. The Great House is just one example of all the noise in there. Here's what a finely tuned ear would make out. It sounds like the director is calling out to Don Knotts, at which point Barney jumps out to surprise two unsuspecting policemen. And when Barney rode his sidecar motorcycle, which never quite worked, what seemed like a mechanical failure was actually a gow around strategically placed wooden blocks holding the sidecar until it would collapse to do the maximum comedic effect. At times, assistance was offered not only to inanimate objects or animal characters, but also to the actors themselves. When pitted against all comers of distraction, the producers would secretly employ stand-ins for physical scenes, even in the presence of a Canucky audience unanimously swearing they were watching Aunt Bee or Goober. An Aunt Bee learns to drive moment had the producers attempt to disguise a stunt woman underneath a large hat, thereby hopefully sparing audiences from an all-too-wise remark about the obvious stunt double. One could easily see why fans were completely won over. Yet, as impressive as these illusions were, they weren't the only hidden truths shaping the Andy Griffith Show. The emotional lives of the actors, especially how they navigated the pressures of stardom behind the scenes, revealed an even deeper layer of complexity that fans never saw coming. The bonds and breakdowns. While the Andy Griffith Show presented a world of easy friendships, gentle humor, and moral clarity, life behind the scenes was far more layered. The camaraderie among the cast was real, but so were the tensions, the private struggles, and the emotional toll that came with keeping Mayberry's charm alive for millions of fans week after week. What most viewers never saw was how much the show's success depended not just on clever writing or production tricks, but on the complicated, very human relationships of the people who brought Mayberry to life. At its heart was the bond between Andy Griffith and Don Knotts. Their on-screen chemistry as Sheriff Taylor and Deputy Barney Fife felt effortless, but it was forged through mutual respect and genuine affection off-screen. The two became close friends, with Griffith deeply admiring Knotts' meticulous preparation and impeccable timing. Knotts, in turn, leaned on Griffith's steadiness, finding in him a calm anchor during the chaotic pace of television production. On February 15th, the 70-year-old shared a nostalgic photo on Instagram showing his The Andy Griffith Show co-stars Andy Griffith and Don Knotts visiting him on set during the 1990s. He captioned the smiling snapshot, a fun photo of the day in '97 when #Andy Griffith and #Don Knotts surprised me with a visit to the set of #Ransom in #Queens. Howard captioned the image of the three men smiling. It was recently confirmed that Don and I were actually distant cousins. Together, they crafted scenes that balanced slapstick with heart, often improvising little details that elevated the humor without losing sincerity. But even this partnership wasn't without its pressures. Knotts, famously anxious about his work, often second-guessed his performances despite universal praise. He would pore over scripts and dailies, determined to maintain the high standard audiences had come to expect, a perfectionism that sometimes left him exhausted. Ron Howard, the child at the center of Mayberry's fictional world, had his own unique place in the dynamic. Far from the carefree boy fans imagined, young Ron faced the strain of balancing schoolwork, a demanding filming schedule, and the expectations that came with being a breakout star. His parents, especially his father, Rance Howard, who occasionally appeared on the show, worked hard to protect Ron's well-being, but even they couldn't shield him entirely from the isolating effects of fame at such a young age. And yet, for all the joyous allegiance of the major cast, the show was not free of deeper divides. When Don Knotts left after 5 years, it was not just a creative loss when he had made all the funny faces. However, it was an emotional blow for Griffith. It was an amicable deal, but not a void that could be fully filled by any of the writers or Griffith himself. The new balance of humor, although it didn't diminish the popularity of the show, detracted from the early magic it had showered on much-beloved seasons. Griffith later said, "It wasn't really the same working without Knotts, since the easy rhythm they had established had been disrupted, and it was felt by everyone affected." Under the stress of the camera, hours spent on long production schedules took their toll as well. So far as the set was ever congenial, there crept up instances when stress threatened to boil over. Working against time, cast and crew seemed to feel that there was little time in which to grapple with the struggles of their personal lives because of the pressure to keep that image of Mayberry. Some cast members were burdened with personal worries, anxieties, marital problems, and simply the fatigue burnout with that image of perfection which it could never really measure up to. And just as these relationships shaped the feel of the show, the hidden production tricks, from sleight-of-hand gags to behind-the-scenes wizardry, played a critical role in crafting the Mayberry millions fell in love with. The legacy Ron Howard carries today. For many fans, The Andy Griffith Show is frozen in time, an untouched snapshot of kindness, simplicity, and small-town charm. But for Ron Howard, the boy who grew up on those familiar streets of Mayberry, the legacy of the show didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. It followed him, shaped him, and quietly influenced the path he took from child star to one of Hollywood's most respected directors. What most fans never realized was just how deeply those early years embedded values and lessons that would define Howard's work for decades to come. Even as a young actor, Ron absorbed more than just his lines. Surrounded by consummate professionals like Andy Griffith, Don Knotts, and Francis Bavier, he witnessed firsthand the power of collaboration, respect, and dedication to craft. He saw how humor could be both gentle and sharp, how character-driven stories could resonate across generations, and how a set, even one built on illusions, could feel like a family. These lessons stayed with him, guiding his approach as he transitioned from being in front of the camera to working behind it. The integrity and warmth that defined Mayberry found echoes in the films he would later create. Inevitably, for Ron, behind the camera, it would not be only the technical aspects that dazzled him, but also the wonderful light and shadow of Mayberry. The farthest thing from the sleepy town in North Carolina are definitely blockbuster pictures like Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, and Cinderella Man, but yet there are common threads which seem to run through each: respect for decency and fortitude against the backdrop of lives suddenly caught in strange situations. Those early years, Howard frequently cites as the inspiration for much of the sensitivity he possesses as a storyteller. Humor and heart, which constituted the soul of The Andy Griffith Show, became defining landmarks of his directorial style. Actually, it has not been simple carrying forth that legacy. For all their fondness and admiration for Opie Taylor, Ron Howard spent much of the adult part of his life laboring quietly to see himself outside the shadow of Mayberry. That phase of life, he says, was full of fondness, but he adds that growing out of such an image so firmly planted in the public imagination comes with its share of challenges. The strung-along journey from beloved child actor to serious filmmaker demanded all patience and perseverance and an adamant refusal to allow himself to be defined by the past. Today, what Ron carries is not just the legacy of a show or character, a way of seeing the world that upholds decency without denying complexity. It's a quiet strength shaped by years of steady work, both on and off the screen. He represents the kind of man who listens more than he speaks. But when he does speak, it matters. There's a rare authenticity in him that makes people feel grounded, seen, and respected. Fans don't just remember his roles, they remember how those roles made them feel. In a time when sincerity feels rare, Ron offers it freely, without fanfare. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden secrets of The Andy Griffith Show, be sure to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into classic television. There's so much more to discover behind the scenes of the shows we thought we knew. Share your favorite goof, blooper, or hidden detail in the comments. Maybe something you never noticed until now. We love hearing what surprised you most. And don't go just yet. The next video on your screen reveals even more surprising truths and behind-the-scenes stories from the golden age of TV. Stick around for more fascinating insights into the legends of television history.